What is something your teacher did in school that you're still salty about? My third grade teacher gave me marks down for spelling a lot, which her dumb FA corrected as a lot. I will probably spend the rest of my life still annoyed with her, and I'm 36. God, same here. When I was 10 Netherlands. Don't know what grade it corresponds with. I got a 90% mark instead of a 100% for a test, because I made a mistake. According to my teacher, it's spelled purple, not purple. Man, she was dumb. You take the bloople, the story ends. If you take the purple, everything in the story is misspelled. I've been angry or depressed all day, and this helped me to smile. I'm grateful for your wit. Low budget Matrix, more epis, and now take on Agent Smut and the Matic. I had a teacher accuse me and a classmate of cheating on an exam because we had the same answer. It was a multiple choice test and she was upset we both had it correct. I'm sorry, you don't suck at teaching as much as you think you do. Turns out you just suck at stats. This kind of reminded me of a stats joke or story or dislike, where you want to call it. 5 students who had an upcoming math test were having too much fun on a trip they were on. So they decided to skip the test and make up a lie to the teacher that they had a flat tire and could not get back. It worked, and the teacher said, "No problem, you can take a makeup." So they finally get back and take the makeup. Happy they are getting away with their ruse. They completed the first sheet of the exam and then noticed it was all worth just 20 points. They flipped over to the next page. A single question worth 80 points. Which tire was flat? Note to self, collaborate with friends on the details of the lie. My English teacher admitted to marking down all my work by a grade because I think you could do better. B. I was doing better and you made it look like I wasn't, caused me to stop even trying. My English teacher would give me 50% of every essay, presumably because she didn't want to read it and was going on reputation. So I decided to try really hard on all my essays for one semester and see if I could get better. I enlisted the help of my much smarter older sister to help me write all of my essays. A girl who had received 99% in this teacher's class in the past. Well, I still got 50% of every essay. So the last essay of the semester we worked long and hard on, and my sister was sure we get a better mark. B still gave me 50%. So my mom and sister went into the school and sat down with the teacher and principal and had it out with this teacher. She maintained that I was a 50% essay writer. On the English final, I got 80% on my essay with blind marking. If you miss, McDonald, you're a lazy B. I had that too in university. C or C on every essay. Finally got my roommate who had an English lit degree help me proofread my final essay and make suggestions. He was teaching the concurrent class and I still got a C. I had an English professor in college that constantly remarked that I had some of the best work in the class, but would consistently give me B+ or a grades on my essays, saying I could do better, and if I did, then I'd earn the highest marks. For the end of semester essay, I went all out and really poured all my effort into the assignment. I finally achieved and a not in a plus though, and was very proud until I saw another classmate's grade of B+, which was absolutely littered with syntax errors, spelling mistakes, run-on sentences, awful formatting. I mean the whole 9 yards. It was a paper whose ceiling at the absolute most was a C. I brought this up with her and she straight up told me that he struggled in class. So she tried to grade him less harshly and that his ideas in the essay were pretty decent. I wasn't mad at him because he'd tried his hardest. I'm glad he got a good grade. But I was furious that I was graded so meticulously and then she applied an arbitrary curve to him. I was thinking to myself, if his paper is a B+, then mine is 110,100. Seeing as it was the end of the semester and the last English class one ever needed to take. It was a gened class my college required everyone to take. I was just glad to never see her again. Still gets me a little angry every time I think about it though. It's almost like they get the 8020 rule misconstrued. Do 20% of the work and you get an 80% on the paper, but to get the extra 20 marks, you gotta pour in the other 80%. At the end of my first week at a new school, the teacher handed out slips of paper with our current grade. I had a solid at my old school, but the teacher said I had an F. I asked her why. She said I didn't hand in the quarter project. I reminded her I had just moved to the school. She said we would give me the weekend to do it. The project was to interview a long-time local resident and write a paper about their experiences. The articles were being collected for a book she was writing. I failed the class. My wife relocated to a new school midway through her senior year. Her math teacher wanted her to make up all of the class work she missed from that class, on top of all regular assignments going forward. After struggling for weeks, the guidance counselor's failed attempts of fixing the situation and unwillingness of the teacher to budge on her ridiculous requests, my wife dropped out. She was a straight-A student up to that point. Some teachers effing monsters. When my mom changed schools in 3rd grade, the first thing they did on her first day was a spelling test. When the teacher was grading them, she got to my mother's test, stood up, and screamed at my mom. In this school, we use cursive. My mom didn't know cursive, but the teacher said that wasn't an excuse and gave her detention. She stressed my mom out so badly that after a couple months of school, Mom ended up in the hospital with severe stomach ulcers. How do these people become teachers? Those sort of stories make me hope if I ever have kids they know to come to me with that and trust it'll get sorted immediately. Most of them do it because they want to teach, but for some people getting that tiny amount of power goes to their head. I had left my calculator on my desk in physics class and the teacher took it. I had engraved my initials on it so it was unmistakable. My problem with this was that he always asked me during class if I had my calculator and I told him. I still couldn't find it. The end of school year comes around and another student was snooping through his desk and found my calculator. All year that a $1 was giving me a 0 for the day since I didn't have it. Plot twist. It was the other student who took your calculator and pretended to find the calculator in the teacher's desk. Username checks out? Never gave my art a higher grade than a B+, even though she asked me every year if she could hold my art back, to show everyone how to correctly apply a technique or what she wanted from everyone else that next year. Not good enough for an A. But this is perfect and it's what I want everyone to do. Which is it then? B. In 3rd grade art class, we had to draw an object that the teacher placed on a table in the middle of the room. There were a few objects to choose from. I started drawing one of them and wasn't happy with it and was thinking of starting on a different one. Before I did, though, the teacher held up my drawing in front of the class to tell everyone how bad it was and point out everything wrong with it. I quietly just started drawing something else. I was a very shy kid. My new drawing was entered into a local show and won. Teacher never said anything to me about it and never gave it back. She hung it up in the classroom for years. I got the equivalent of AC for that class normally in a student. Mrs. Watkins. Effing dislike art teachers with one exception. The ones who feel like a school grandma and understand art is emotional. In a teacher. So far, every art teacher at all the schools I've taught at has graded on effort and attempting to complete the assignment. For instance, if the lesson is on cross-hatching, they grade based on if you used cross-hatching in the piece. Doesn't matter if it looks like complete SH. You get 100 if you used cross-hatching. I feel like that is the only way to grade art in school. You show the skills and have the students demonstrate them, but you can't grade on quality. I totally agree. I always thought I was bad at art after that, and then in adulthood realized I wasn't, and could have pursued it if not for that awful art teacher. Not like a career, but maybe it would have been something I would have enjoyed doing, but instead I never bothered. Alright, so this is something that really had me pissed off as a kid, and every time I think about it, I get fired up. I was in 3rd grade. The 2nd, 3rd, and 4th grades were doing a week of square dance. Then at the end of the week on Friday, we were going to have a recital and do a performance. Sadly, I was leaving for vacation and that would be starting that Friday, so I couldn't be in the recital. Oh well, I could still enjoy the square dance and have some fun with the rest of the classes. Right. Nomi teacher made me sit in the classroom alone, while everyone was across the hall in the big classroom doing the dances. She made me do freaking vocabulary words for hours while I had to sit in a darkened room, alone, listening to the muffled sounds of Cotton-Eyed Joe stomping and laughing coming from the hallway. I was so pissed. I was crying every day. I begged her to just let me sit in there. I offered to clap, help with music, hold up a sign, just sit in the corner, anything, to be a part of it. But nitrogen monoxide, I had to sit alone, no lights, and do vocabulary words with tears just running down onto the paper for 4 days straight. She basically punished me with in-school suspension for not being able to be at the recital due to my family vacation. I freaking dislike that bee to this day. Pee on her grave when she dies like that other guy. She's been dead for years, but I was going through some old photos at Mom's place a few months ago, and there was a pic of my younger sister standing with her and other teachers. I hadn't seen her face for years and just the sight of her made me so angry. I had to leave and go for a walk to cool off. So, what I'm hearing is she has a grave now. First step, locate grave. Second step, hydrate enthusiastically. In grade 4, my teacher kept making me redo my printing sheets because my handwriting wasn't neat. Eventually, I asked him why he didn't make any of the boys redo their sheets, because they had messy handwriting too. I still remember the look of shock on his face, but didn't understand the significance at the time, because I was just genuinely asking. I don't remember what he said afterwards other than the fact that I didn't find his answer satisfying. This is fascinating. What a sh. My ex's parents asked her math teacher how they could better prepare for exams at home. Since she was getting a B and really wanted to do better, his response was, "Oh, she's doing fine. Girls don't have to be good at math anyway." She ended up being an accountant. Threatened to hit me when, as a brand new midterm transfer in grade 3, I was too scared to speak to ask for her help, so I had tapped her on the arm instead to get her attention. Apparently, that warranted threatening to assault an 8-yo in the 90s. I had been there less than 2 weeks, and had just transferred from a school of 40 to a school of over 200. Some teacher did the same to me when I transferred from primary to middle grade small town. One school had kindergarten up to 4th grade, then the second one has 5th grade to 8th grade. Then it was 9 to 12 at another one. I tapped her at recess because I had been waiting to ask her something for 10 minutes, and she wasn't looking at my raised hand. She absolutely lost it and berated me. Turns out she had had cancer in that arm not too long ago and wasn't comfortable being touched. I understand, but I didn't know about that and I was only like 10y. Oh. I mean, sure, but Jesus have some self-control and be an adult. If a person can't handle something enough that they'll go off on a child like that, they've got a real problem and it isn't the cancer in her arm. She gave me detention for chewing gum. I didn't even enter the classroom when she did this. She smelled mint from my mouth when I said good morning back to her. I also got detention for that. The teacher had apparently, 5 minutes into class, said the next person I see with gum or candy in my class is getting detention. I didn't hear her say that, because I was half an hour late due to a doctor's appointment and she knew it. F you, Ms. Simpson. Who the heck gives detention for gum? Anyway, Someone who's tired of hearing the janitor complain to their boss that they aren't enforcing the no gum rule. Scraping chewing gum is friggin' nasty. That rule is in place for a reason. That's a good point, and I'd believe it if it were any other teacher. However, this one issued a disproportionate number of detentions, and for minor infractions. Most teachers meted out detentions for stuff like repeatedly failing to turn in work or fighting in class. Ms. Simpson and her detentions. She rolled her eyes. He didn't know the answer to the question. I put them on a quota of 3 questions a day, and they asked a question quota. What would a horrible teacher? One of my teachers simply disliked my smirk, and we got into it in the hallway. He looked me dead in the eye and said I couldn't douche cause he was a teacher, and then slapped me. Well, joke's on him, cause a decade later his wife F-ed a high school student. F you, Mr. Marchese. Your wife F.S. kids. Where did this happen? Where I live, most parents would at least beat the living SHT out of him. When is more important than where? 30 or 40 years ago that would have accepted. Depends on the parent. In the 70s. My mom sat the principal of my brother's elementary school down and told him physical discipline was her job. If she ever heard that bro had been paddled or smacked, she would return the favor to the offending teacher staff member. Darn, my mom was the complete opposite. I had a teacher send a note home asking if she could spank me. My mom said yes. LMAO. Thanks, Mom. A commonly relatable Reddit scenario: typed out an essay in class while we were in the computer lab, yet upon printing and handing it in I was accused of plagiarizing it. Don't even remember the teacher's name, as she was one of the other staff teachers substituting for the regular one. Just the shrill accusatory tone of her going, "You didn't write this. If you miss whoever you were." I worked diligently on that bullshit. Kind of off topic. But this reminded me of middle school, when apparently like 50% of my class plagiarized the same paper from the same source. I had a heart attack when I realized that by coincidence I used the same opening line in my own essay despite not having plagiarized. I spent like a week terrified that I would be accused of plagiarism. Wasn't. Thankfully, the teachers were actually decent enough to read the rest of my essay before making assumptions. The fact that I've never cheated before probably helped. I was about 9 years old and she wrote our language's word for ceremony on the blackboard. She spelled it with an S, like ceremony, and I raised my hand and asked if the word should not in fact be spelled with a C. She argued that she was quite sure it actually was an S, and wouldn't back down, even though I was absolutely sure. I read a lot of books as a kid and had read the word in my native language multiple times. Of course, I looked it up after the class, and it turned out I was right. Still haven't forgotten. 20 years later, I guess she didn't want to lose face in front of a bunch of kids. Same happened to me in 3rd grade. A substitute teacher was teaching us about the 13 colonies, and I pointed out that she omitted Georgia. She said no, Georgia was not one of the original colonies, and proceeded to list all the other colonies plus Vermont and Maine. I said that she had listed 14 colonies, and that Vermont and Maine were not among them. She sent me to the principal's office for talking back. The principal brought me back upstairs and chewed her out in front of the class. For what it's worth. Props to the principal for sticking up for you. Oh my God, my cookery teacher. Won't give her real name. So we shall call her Gordon Ramsay's grandma. AKA GRG was an old witch who should have retired years ago and had anger issues. She was furious when she learned I didn't use a gas cooker at home. Electric was cheaper. So didn't know how to immediately fire one up on the first lesson. I was about 10 years old. This woman would bellow at me from across the room. As a sensitive, people-pleasing kid, I was a blubbering, trembling mess each lesson because I was petrified of making mistakes and her shouting at me. One day I was running behind. I always ran behind. and she took my food out of the oven, cakes on a baking tray, and I reached to grab something and accidentally brushed against her arm. This CNT literally screamed, grabbed my wrist and pressed my palm against the baking tray. The baking tray that had just come out of a 200-degree oven, only for a split second. Didn't hold it there or anything, but it was enough to blister my skin. One day I couldn't face going to her class, so I feigned illness and was kept off school. One of my classmates told me apparently during registration roll call, when they told her I was off sick. GRG laughed and said, "No, she isn't. She's just scared of me. Nice to see you were so self-aware." B. I never reported it directly, but I did tell my mom, who demanded the school did something about it. We had a meeting with the head of year who laughed it off, saying she's a good teacher. She just doesn't like the quiet ones. Nothing was done. If the crusty cow is still alive, she'll be in the Guinness World Records. Rotten heck, GRG. You saw a shy kid, and instead of building up her confidence and patiently teaching her a valuable life skill, you decided to bully her and drag her self-esteem down to rock bottom's basement. It took me ages to learn how to cook because of you. Thankfully, I got my confidence back and now enjoy cooking. King. Another one to add to the list of graves that will need to be pissed on. FGRG. Yeah, she is not one of my most pleasant flashbacks.